Okay, folks, go live now. Right, team, welcome back to Tech Workshop today. This one is an update on the latest status of the Volume 2 plan. I will have to duck out at 3 o'clock for the Museum of Poetry opening quickly. So I'll turn to Andrew to chair the steering again, but otherwise, basically, this workshop will be done by Steve and John taking you through the slides and the senior team. So, hand it over to Steve. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, and firstly, Happy New Year, councillors. Nice to see you all. The purpose of today is we're going to give you an update on where we've got to with our long-term plan, following on from the 6th of December meeting. John's going to give you a quick update on project timeframe. We have had our first meeting with Taumata Arawai. As you recall, that's one of the significant components of our long-term plan, and we'll give you a bit of an update through Eric as to I guess what that means and how we're now approaching that matter. Douglas and Lynn will then give you a run through of the rates and borrowings, where we are at now and what have we changed following your guidance from the 6th of December. And a large part of that, that work has been ongoing across December, through the new year, across the holidays too. So we had to bring some staff back in to come and do this. And it'd be fair to say there's been a truckload of work going into this position today. So I'm grateful for the team for doing that work. Douglas is going to give a quick update on development contributions policy, and then draft consultation topics, which John will highlight those, and then the team will talk to each one of those. And then Chrissy will give you an overview of the consultation plan and the next steps. We are going to have a small public excluded session today, and that's to protect the privacy of neutral persons. And we will then finish hopefully at 5 o'clock. So John, over to you.
Thanks, Steve, and happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for attending the time today. So this is the timeline of the project at present. So the first thing I wanted to outline was how our auditors, we've contacted our auditors already, and we have spoken to them, I think 3 or 4 times over the last 5 or 6 weeks. The audit process so far is going pretty well. We spoke to them yesterday, so they've changed their audit approach slightly in terms of when they're going to come to the district. They're looking to come to the district at the end of this month, pending whether they're at that point. So that goes to the first point of whether we're looking to finalise the draft long-term plan, which is why the date is between the 19th of January and the 29th of January. In terms of the narrative of the document, we're quite far along in the process, but we're nearly there, which is a great news story. On the 14th of February, we'll have a workshop which will outline the financial strategy, which will outline the proposed infrastructure strategy, proposed KPIs, and some of the policies and the assumptions as well. Moving on from that, as you know, that the 29th of February we have a finalised draft long-term plan. Then we will, between the 18th and the 27th of March, you guys will adopt the draft long-term plan, including the consultation document. I'm going to talk about this in a little while, but as part of the Minister for Government letter that we received at the end of last year that I sent to you guys last night, they have outlined that if we do take the approach of pushing the adoption date back, which we'll discuss in a little while, there is a view that the consultation document doesn't need to be audited. However, we in conversation with the auditors, we said that we'd be happy to go ahead with the consultation document, as the plan suggests. So, in that time of March, there may be some workshops that are not booked in as of yet that might determine what the draft long-term plan looks like. We can have some discussions around budget with you, as well as some consultation tools that we can give you for your consultation in April. Between the 29th of March and the 2nd of April is when we will be consulting with the community. So it's, as Chrissy will outline later on, but it's going to be a very similar approach to what we did with the pre-engagement. There's not much change from that. We know it's as much as anyone else, so I think what's really there, I think we're going to continue through that process. On the 2nd of May, the submission process will close. So obviously as part of this long-term plan, it's really important to hear submissions from the community. That will be part of the consultation, showing people how they can do their submissions so that they can really get the voice heard. And from there, between the 13th of May and the 31st of May, we'll have public hearings and deliberations on the long-term plan. That's what we're saying, if the public is to be heard. Between the 7th and the 14th of June, we're going to complete the final long-term plan and set the shape of the state today. And as at the moment, the date for adoption of the long-term plan is the 28th of June. So as you can see in the last column, between July and September, as I will talk about in another minute, the Minister for Local Government has pointed out that we can push our adoption date to the end of September. And at the moment, as it stands, we're looking to get it done in June. I think that the thing we need to think about really carefully, and we'll talk about this later on, is around our northern door water supplies and what ROI advising us to do, and then it will take to fill it up to that. So moving on from that, as the Honourable Simeon Brown, the Minister for Government, did issue us with a letter at the end of last year, and that letter was basically outlining that they were going to appeal the affordable waters legislation with a view that they're looking to launch their own policy with the water. That was given to us at the end of last year. In that letter that you received, that I shared with you last night, they gave two options as to how councils may approach it. And one of the options, as I discussed earlier on, is around us potentially looking to adopt the long-term plan in September or between the months of June and September if it's needed. So what that's something that I think we should have a discussion on as time goes on. However, our view at the moment certainly is that we still be looking to adopt in June if we can, but that will be very much dependent on what the regulations state around water, which will be something discussed later on today. And I think that's that. Just so we should hear, we have heard a little update from there that the legislation will be repealed around the water legislation. This should be done within the next month or so. And I'm going to pass you on to Eric, who's going to talk about the ROI letters we received at the end of last year around our Northern Blue Waters.
Yeah, thanks, John. Happy to do that. So, for councillors' benefit of situational awareness, the Te Mara Aroha, New Zealand's national water regulator, sent out a variety of letters to councils just like us around New Zealand to get their water supplies that are not compliant. The dates in those letters were that by June 2024 there was a financial plan in place, and by December 2024 there was an appropriate bacterial protozoa barrier in place. In effect, effective treatment. Several exchanges of correspondence happened between the Village Council and the regulator, and that resulted in a meeting with Te Mara Aroha key staff, which we had here in council chambers last week on the 25th of January. Within that meeting, we talked about this council's position, where it's currently at, and what some of the significant steps we still need to be undertaken to get the three particular northern Bulla non-compliant water supplies compliant. That's one umbrella, little longer than we had. I felt it was a good meeting where the regulator and the representatives of Te Mara Aroha really heard us out and understood our status. And within that, we discussed effectively what the options are for this council in relation to the list that's being served by Steve Taylor, who's the Director of Park Enforcement. And effectively, it comes down to three different options being available. One was that a territorial authority, like ourselves, apply under the Water Services Act for an exemption to the Act. That is difficult. And for those that have been watching developments in the water sector in New Zealand, you'll know that Christchurch City Council, for example, went down the pathway of looking to exempt themselves from the regulations of the Act, and they fell short. They already had large amounts of treatment that was just around the adding of chlorination. In our case, to get an exemption from the Act for an untreated supply would be a very, very difficult to take. Option number 2, which really was the preferred option out of the 3, was where Te Mataparawai said under the legislation we started a conversation about entering into an enforceable undertaking. And I might circle back to that in a minute as well and explain that a little bit more. But an enforceable undertaking is effectively where a council comes to an agreement after a discussion with the regulator about what their pathway to compliance looks like and commits to that. Option number 3, available to territorial authorities around New Zealand that have been told to get compliant, is to simply do nothing and await a regulatory approach from the regulator. Equally, that is certainly also far from a recommended option. It is one that will see entities pivot against one another in a situation. So it became quite apparent from staff and the people involved that out of the 3 options that were in front of us going forward, the most appropriate one is to engage with Mataparawai to understand what an enforceable undertaking looks like, what some of the timeframes that are acceptable to the regulator to get compliant would look like, particularly the situation of how much work we still need to do, but elements of affordability around that for those communities that the water supply services. The regulator saw it relatively similar and made the offering to start scheduling a meeting to discuss further with them about this preferred pathway, this pathway. And they scheduled the 12th of February for us to get together with Bruce McLaren and key staff of to understand what this process would look like. That is well placed because it's 2 days before the next significant workshop on the LTP, which is dated on the 14th. And the conversation that we'll have will further inform what sort of timeframes and what sort of ability this council has to find an appropriate timing and pathway for compliance. So that's certainly a bit of a quick wrap up at where we found ourselves in September of 2023, when we've been receiving our letters to get compliant to where we are now with the regulator, and also use the segue going forward to potentially explore what a enforceable undertaking would look like as one of the 3 options that we can consider.
Just in summary, so we received 3 letters, one from the Minister for Local Government, 2 from Mataparawai. So I think one thing I would like to highlight is, in terms of the letters from the Minister for Local Government, we've certainly been proactive in our approach as to how we've taken those steps on. We have written to them, and the same with Mataparawai. We've been proactive and brought them into the council chambers to try and start the conversations around what we can do moving forward. So I thought this was a good time to stop and see if you had any questions on either the process as a whole in terms of timeline, or anything to do with the Minister's letter, or any questions from our board. So pass it over to you.
So I suppose, Eric, way that if we comply with the regulators and on board and showing good faith to work with a resolution, you feel like that's the most favourable way of working through obviously going to be great expense. And also, the second question too is the water total rate seems summary. Also, for Motunui especially, that's on a boarding establishment, going to be huge cost to get that water supply to provide. Is there any point in having those discussions with them, knowing that we're never going to be able to afford it? Shouldn't we be talking to the actual people that live there and keep them before the end?
I might start the response and then pass over to Eric from a technical point of view. The agreement with Te Mataparawai for enforceable action is a commitment to a work program to come up with a viable, sustainable and hopefully in our case, an affordable solution for each community.
Yeah.
And that means that might take that out of our long-term plan conversation, because we simply don't have enough information to have an informed consultation with each of those communities. The enforceable agreement, and this is the meeting that we're going to have on the 12th, is to understand that from Taumata Arawai's point of view, will help us create that pathway so that this possibly becomes an annual plan consultation matter rather than a long-term, because we simply may not have the costed range of options that Eric's team at the moment is currently looking at for each of those water supplies. That's one of the things that we need to ask from Taumata Arawai, because then we will come back to you and say, well, we think we should exclude this now, noting that we will come back to this through another consultation period. And critically, Taumata Arawai and the council agree to that together, which means that their letters of enforcement, which I received last year, have been adequately responded to, and we've got a pathway forward. So, Eric, anything?
Okay, Joe.
I just, it's answered a lot of my questions. The other one is, how broadly are they looking at solutions? Are they got a pretty narrow focus, or are they open to affordable solutions or ones that match particular communities? They got a broad outlook, are they very narrow in their?
Yeah, so the short answer there is they're empathetic and they understand community situations, but they are guided by their own legislation and standards. So they have got quite a clear, prescriptive set of standards that safe and compliant drinking water in New Zealand must comply with. And they will hold drinking water suppliers to account to those. Also, the permanent point that Steve was making as well is that actually continuing the conversations with them allows us time to look at any other alternative solutions that might be available for those small economic suppliers. That could be through financial instrument, rate sharing, that later, or it could be looking through other avenues of actually, at what point is a small suppliers who are supplying actually other avenues to provide those.
Just down to the level of water teams and unvetted filters, is that there is possibilities?
Well, you're saying work's being done, but where is that work at? Have they, have staff looked at different solutions to date or different options to date for these 3 water supplies? Because they have been working on them for probably 2-3 months now, and I thought something might be coming to light, and as I mentioned a number of times, dare I say it, Karen managed to get these for 60,000 at a price tag of 600,000 for compliant water. And this is where I think if you can look at that process, it's compliant water and it's far more acceptable, because all these costs and what our rate rises is completely insensitive to our community at the moment. And likewise those water rates. So I would just like some knowledge that something basic and is already tried and true is going to be looked at. So where are these options at the moment? At a high level, or just sort of looking as to what you have to do for compliance?
Yes, I'm quite happy to answer that. So, in short, staff are working through all 3 suppliers now, taking in turn, one on a rower. This one is what we have the longest history of looking at. So you can see the data here about what a compliance solution would look like, and about what the cost of that might look like. It's Little Wanganui and Mokanui that are currently another great focus about getting some data out in the field. So, this council will be made available some bedrock funding towards doing some more explorations and some water sampling for those suppliers to inform what a range of treatment options could look like. Obviously, with the lowest cost burden to those communities being approved.
If we could ask one step back, water supply, groundwater supply is one, which won't happen immediately. But both areas have got water. And what would be a realistic cost of treating water of the vaccinated compliant?
Yeah,
Has
and
that been done? Yes or no?
yes, that's been worked on. And it's actually getting a resolution to those costings that pick it up from our range of opportunities and a pathway to this compliance. That will take time for that. And, to some extent, taking this pathway with TA provides us the best opportunity to take that time and make those.
I don't think you need time, I'm just asking for some basic stuff to be done before we go deep, you know, to find out whether something tried and true will actually work before you go to something more sophisticated. And that is quite a reasonably priced option. Is that possible?
Yes, but we are looking at all viable options, and affordability is the top of the list. And so, yes, to answer your question, Rosalie, that is possible. Well, like I have to rely on the team to ensure that they have the data. We also need to understand from Toma's from their point of view what is acceptable.
Yeah. That's the key point, because we sort of put some really simplistic examples to them and said, what do you make of that? Like, what about we'll drink bottled water and the water just comes out of the tap and the rest of it? How does that work? But that being taking your head, but there's simple questions we need to ask them, push them to say, what's the answer to that? So that we get rid of those ones or they're viable. So that's the type of stuff we need some direction to regulate on, as Eric said. So I think the thing would be, if I was you, I'd be putting those options to us so we can say, here we go, tomorrow, right? How do you deal with that one? Because they're going to give them New Zealand wide anyway.
I realise that, but I'm getting extremely frustrated that we're going round in circles, and every time I hear it's a huge cost, we have got community out there, and I hear that they are just getting really stressed as to what it's really going to cost them. And as I go back, I know it's squeaky, but we've done it in Paramere, it is compliant, and it's working.
I think our point is we need to put those type of so-called options to them, so they say yes or no, because this option, Eric's explained, buys us some time to see how we fund these things and get to fund them. Because the other options, which are exemptions, difficult to get, not possible, and being fined if we do nothing. So really unfortunate, this is the only option, but we also want to see basic options in some terms.
But no work has been done on the basic option.
No, as Eric said, there's following spots at the moment. So there are some stuff being done as opposed to expensive.
Andrew did charge.
Since it's a national priority, fresh drinking water, is there any opportunity, or is there going to be opportunity to maybe get a contestable grant or apply for contestable funding to make it happen? That would be the ultimate, if it's a requirement, not by us, and it's not a nomination, then there seems to be a want for the government to have fresh water. So do you think it's likely with an opportunity to have some sort of provincial funding?
Yeah, right. Thank you, GP. The government have indicated through their information following their election that they are looking at a pool of funds for local government to potentially use. Now, what we aren't sure and what we've been really clear with you throughout is that there is no criteria, there's no confirmation of how much that fund is and how do we apply for it, and what are the conditions on that. We think there's a fund, we just don't know. And so that's we think that is potentially one of the reasons why the Crown have also put in the instrument through the local government around the extension of long-term plans being approved out till September. So we would expect that we will hear more over the next month and a half, and that's part of the reason why we want to share with you Simeon Brown's letter, because that is one of the factors that we might need to pull on and go, do we wait and find out if there is or isn't, or do we go ahead and it's an annual plan matter later? So that's why.
My one was about how much we can leverage up. I mean, one of the costs is staff time, resources, whatever, outside technical information, how much can we leverage them actually into developing and supporting solutions? How much will they do for us?
Tell me look, based on the discussion that we had with them, we asked a few questions about, so what are the other councils doing? And we didn't get any information out of that because there is a sense of privacy and there's a sense of there's an individual regulator council relationship. So I don't think that's going to be an avenue that we're going to get much help out of. But certainly, Eric and Mike and their networks in the water sector, we are expecting that our teams are talking with their peers around the country and go, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And also, we should be doing it with our neighbouring councils as well.
I'm sure you guys are all over it, but would it be possible to take the members of the other active small communities in person so they can see them for themselves? Because we from our lunch relate to what it's actually like. So it's a bit of another road trip.
Oh, you want to answer the question? Is when they were over last week, they came to two things. One was the regulatory team and senior leaders that speak on behalf of the organisation that were right here. The second team actually went out to the field with our staff. Their focus was at the moment on checking water safety plans and risk water treatment. We gave them a really clear presentation and I hope we didn't quite see the cost as well. Thank you, Tony.
Cool, thank you. So are they saying to separate it, pluck it out, this is the water out of the long-term plan, so we can focus on that, so they can see exactly what we're doing, and something comes up, we're cooperating to jump.
Yeah,
So
back last year, we've already budgeted on keeping this out of the long-term plan because of the degree of uncertainty. So that's the approach, and so the budget you see reflects that. The conversation we've got to have on the 12th is the time frame of enforceable action agreement and the time frame of getting simple data around the range of options from gold plated to whatever plated, and just get that in front of decision makers, initially you, to go, which are your options and then how do we decide? My gut feel is that this is going to be outside of our long-term plan process.
Yeah, and just to add to Steve's point there, but when we were with us last week, we advised them that at present it's not in a long-term plan budget.
Yeah.
So we're clear, we're honest with them, and that's why later on in the slide that you see we've put it in, but we're putting it in with the proviso. The only reason we'll put it in the budget is if the 12th of February they got told it after.
Colin, I'd like to ask, thank you. We're all aware, also aware of the application national party put out a school water, local water, done well. Put out a copy here. But there are a number of missions, obviously external ones, and for us to start to do pilot with with three waters, so and obviously we've got the current regulator. There's also the one that's proposed to come through the Commerce Commission. So there's a lot of reporting to be done, and that I would have thought would be, let's start getting some templates ready for that now, in anticipation. But there was also a point in there, once the legislation starts to be moved through national, and they're going to fast track one of the appeal and then bring the new one, which you mentioned earlier. There's also access to funding. Now, that's not contestable funding, but as I understand it, it is funding to assist sort of this document. Happy to send it out as well through email. We'll see it. Anyway, with that contestable funding, with the external funding, is that being taken into account at the moment, or are we we're parking the three waters at the moment and business as usual?
Yeah, we are parking this issue on particular projects are, we've got very much a holding pattern of capital budget at this time, but so we've held the capital spend out, we've held the funding. We have written in notes though to go into our assumptions saying that we expect this fund. And like a number of you, reading that National Party manifesto, it does look quite favourable because it talks about things like if you've been spending your money, i.e. retarget rate on water things, wastewater things, that's good. You know, you haven't been taken off for a library or a road or whatever. So when you read that framework, it does look like if they create something in there, their integrity's there, it will be good for us. So it is, as Steve said before, stepping through the points, and that is rather useful last week. Okay, no further round to accept what Eric's explained, which was useful. And then it's the next meeting on the 12th. Right, what's the next bit of information so we can say to you, right, this is the position we should take, particularly on these issues.
I just like to add one thing, just like to water health, if that's possible. That was a policy the National Party island in April, March or April. But that is not a confirmed, that's not a confirmed policy yet. We're still awaiting that final information, just so that was the mandate for the election, but it may change as we move forward.
I also think very important for the discussion is each of these was has a particular hazard sign and what is our level of investment or the applicable solution to take into account those areas.
Douglas, can I ask a quick question? Has the money that the council has collected for water in the last 18 years been spent purely on water?
Yeah, because well as targeted rating, it has a closed account. So it's like, and to be really clear, there's a bucket, and the money went into the bucket, and the money came out of the bucket to pay for it. So we can clearly demonstrate that. And when the 3 water teams from BIA came through and did that review process, that's one of the things I looked at. Because we had to show them that our water debts were very clear. So yeah.
So no other money has gone into the bucket, it's just
looking at this approach to make sure I'm not being over the top, the answer would be we're fine.
You're absolutely spot on.
Yeah. And the DIA process, we had to go back and look at a few things. We also get audited because targeted rates are one of those things they do. They don't usually go through the transaction, they do it. So no, we're good at that. This is a whole lot.
Yeah. John, do we carry on?
Yeah. I'm now going to pass you over to Douglas and Mike.
So we've got a update for you from the changes since the 6th of December. I'll just talk through this slide which explains the at a high level what we've been working on, the challenging work we've done for the last few weeks, and then Douglas will give you a bit more detail. So what we've done with the budgets that we've got, we're running forward to you shortly, is that we've implemented the scope adjustment for significant 3 waters capital. And that's to acknowledge that in any year we might plead to do a certain level of work, however we achieve slightly less to do other reasons. And so that's actually what you see each year with the carryover report. So we've actually looked at that and said realistically we need to pull back some of the significant capital, especially at the difference. The second thing we've done is we've reduced our budgets, particularly in the 3 waters area. Although the savings we thought we took on the day, yes, we've found a bit of things here. Actually, we're just speaking about the question before about the ring fence in the water. When we provided the rates increase to you earlier on 6th of December, that had some deficits, so we weren't actually raising quite enough. So what we're doing in terms of finding savings is actually shoring up our cash position, as well as actually, it doesn't make as much savings with the rates as we wish. So we've actually looked at that carefully. We've really tested ourselves and challenged each other in terms of infrastructure and financing we can get savings. We looked at the phasing and the connection and spread of target rates. So we all understand the concept of intergenerational equity and making sure that we don't just rank the rates up in year 1 and let it go. So we've looked at how we can phase in the collection of rates. And of course, if we need to collect more rates, we've only got 2 options to run a overdraft essentially or deficit, or we need to do some more borrowing for capital projects as well. So we end up in a situation where we've got a couple of levers and they group fund. So when we talk to you about rates and debt, it really is that. it actually becomes more rates that you take on as you know, in the long run, but paying more for that debt you take on. We looked at the loan funding requirements and the rate values discussed there. We looked at the significant capital projects. Some of the timing has been subtle enough that we may just move it forward back in year to see. Because our long-term plan profile right now looks like kind of expected to, whereas year 1 and 2 rates are relatively high increases, and then you look at the 10-year plan, the outcomes drop away. So we've got to see what we can spread out there. And there's always that pressure between, if you do it now, you know it's more going to be, you know, it always gets more expensive as time goes on. So how can we manage that, and what can we also reduce around risk and project funding agreements, and there's whole lots of mix here. And we've also looked at an option which Douglas and I had really good conversations about, and it's about loan funding, so a smoothing option of potentially at the moment, we've got it in at 700,000. And this is really key that to talk to as a team. Douglas will talk more in the next slides he's got. This is an option potentially to actually spread the requirement for the year 1 rates and take it out. And there's all the scholars have talked about that. So I think I'll hand on to you, Douglas.
So just before we get going, before you get started, John, we're just going to double check. The sound's working, but the quality is just not that great. So we just want to check to make sure the microphones are working as they should do.
That's the choice, isn't it? Yeah, constant speakerphone. Yeah.
Chris, is that better? Yes.
I can't hear anything.
Chris, is that better?
You encryption your side phone?
No. Hello? Yeah, I can hear numbers.
Can you hear me now? Otherwise, it's good to go. You know?
It's hard, it's delay.
Should delay in case you say the wrong thing.
That's good. There we go. Good. You're on mute.
Right, just want to.
You've talked about targeted rates. The spreadsheet that we've got sent out, is that what we're talking about? You made mention of the fact that you didn't want horrific increases at the beginning of the 10-year term, but I'm looking at increases of 86 and 78. Is this still relevant, this spreadsheet that we got sent out last night?
Some of the individual targeted rates have quite big lifts and are significant. When we get, we won't get into specific details about individual suppliers today, but we will at our next sessions. But because we want to talk about our district water rating, but we'll talk a bit about general rating and target rate. Just trying to get clarity on that, because I think that's the point a number of you have made, which is, yep, we need to know waters, but we need to know just if you're rural themselves. So we've got that split.
And my other question is that on the spreadsheet, does that include the old 3 water compliance, or is this just business as usual with those huge increases?
It's got significant investment for a number of water suppliers, let's say Peter Pike and Westport, working there, and resilience investment, which we want to talk about specifically. Minimal, just with a holding pattern for what we call the northern willow protozoa barrier. They're not cost isn't in, rating isn't calculated, because we just don't know. We'd like to think we get 100% from Crown, so we just try to take that prudency picture.
Thank you.
John made a good point, which just want to highlight it. It may look as though we've not done a lot on numbers, partly it's because we've going to provide some time with the regulator to talk about that, but we've done a heap of work on documentation. So there's a lot of the stuff we have to have ready for our auditors. With our auditors, we talk to them not quite every week, bringing them up to speed with where they are, because we are delayed on this. Any councils are delayed, the auditors are sort of every day, imagine March time. It's fair to say they were reasonably happy with the progress we've made pre-Christmas to after Christmas. So a lot of work done by the staff who did work over Christmas, their period paid off. And the thing that I think worked well from my perspective, the CFO, is Lynn and particularly Eric and Mel have run a lot of checks and tests on our expenditure in past years and looked at our budgets in future years. So we've taken that time to go and test things to make sure that actually we have got the budgets we need to be a proper water supply entity. That aside, I would also say that as we move into the next stage of now being that entity, there will be a few more things about how we operate. We may need to look at harder in terms of the systems we use to manage and whether there needs to be some improvements. Those costs won't be significant in the scheme of things, but I think there's that sort of stuff we have to make a few changes. And if I go back to the work in the area that I look after, which is digitalising our manual systems here at the council, it's that type of thing. We got to make a little bit of investment money to get some better way of how you look after and consider your water supplies. They still keep focusing on reducing costs where possible, finding alternative revenues, but ultimately, as Lynn said before, it does come down how do we use our debt. That's a big thing the new government push. How are you using debt? This idea of 50-year loans is fascinating, but we should at least be looking at loans that relate to the resource consent we hold for activity. So, for argument's sake, if you get a wastewater plant, you consent, goes for 30 years, borrowing over 30 years makes a lot of sense. But at the end of that 30 years, you want to have enhanced consent and more cost, so you don't want to be paying for the lap loan and the new loan. So that's a key thing we just have to keep looking at. And yet we still hold issues around our level of service and that type of aspect that we can look at. So if we go to the first slide, and I just want to really stress here that, if you're finding this is all a little bit sort of confusing and challenging, we've got time to come back and look at these in future sessions. I just want to highlight, so go to that table, John. So I should have swapped, Marvin did me swap the slides now. Go, what's the next one? Okay, so this is a table you have seen previously, and help me might. Pre-Christmas we were talking about a figure of 31.7, which I use words like, well, that's an absolute worst case scenario, but we want to get it all off the table. So the work that Lynn's referred to, getting it down to this 25.4, we all agree it's a little bit high, if not a lot high. Flag a couple of things. Our targeted rates for water and wastewater. Remembering we held at 1 July 23 the water and wastewater rates. So we should have had about a total rates increase of 13.2. We didn't lift the targeted rates, we just lifted the general rate. So we've got a wee bit of recovery built into there. Not perfect, but it's one of those things we took a bit of a punt on. And then as we work through, we've obviously taken the comment about roading and transport that our community outcomes work has supported. We've had those presentations. Mel and Eric have presented on that. So we've got this table of how we can see our funding working. This is the little bit I just want to talk a little bit about now. So as we sit down and try and figure out, okay, well, what other funding options have we got to use? So if you go back to that first slide, which is the graph, John. the other to the left.
That's good.
Yeah. Cool. So you will recall this is again a familiar graph, the orange being target rate movements and the blue being general rate movements. So like a lot of councils, it's a nationwide problem. Everyone's saying, well, actually, we've got some massive issue here and problem here. How do we deal with that? Because as you can see, once we've got our income streams up, our levels we're happy with, they start to sort of peter off a bit. We've got the Burl inflation adjusters here, we've got other things in there. So that is, how do we knock this issue off? And we only really, in essence, have two funding sources that are available to us. One is increasing rates, which is what this is showing, and the second thing is debt. And when we talk about debt, we sort of talk about long-term debt. So loans that are taken out for, say, a minimum of 20 or 25 years, they may roll and renew themselves, every 3 years or 5 years, but it's a long-term debt position. So one of the things I've explored and we've kicked around in finance is, if we sort of went, and I use this best carefully, but if we said, why don't we use our so-called bank overdraft for a period? Why don't we use a chunk to try and get the general rate down? And as you can see here, and I just use this 5% line, if you can sort of use some of this capacity and rating then to pay it off, is that a feasible option? Now, the initial reaction of an accountant would be, we don't like using sort of short-term overdrafts, or, I won't use the word provide carefully, credit card borrowing. But in essence, we're trying to find what other mechanisms are that don't have a lot of things to sell. We don't have a lot of things that we can create other income from. So this is the one we're putting out here for you to think about. If you all sit here today and go, it's a dumb idea, don't care about it, then we'll go and find another one. But it's one thing I do want you to have a think about that. Because a number of you, and I looked at the ground here in the farming sector, farmers make use of overdrafts because it's often cheaper to use the bank finance in your own finance, like your own assets, when you've done a crop or you buy the livestock or whatever it is. So it's not unusual to see this type of thing. You've just got to make sure that you can pay it back, and you pay it back in a prudent time. And the mechanism we're using at the moment for the dredge in the harbour is exactly that. It's a closed account running in a deficit. At some point, we expect the benefits, we're seeing already now from mineral sands, the benefits I can tell we're reporting to you in the middle of February on where the dredge is at. We've been really fortunate with those good contracts, but we're keeping the dredge working well. We've got some good future work starting to be looked at, and it's coming back into a financially positive position. So if we just flip down to this one, so you can see in this example what we've modelled is we've said, okay, well, if we put 700,000 in, what would that do to our total rates movement? And it allows us that we can nip a bit of that total rates movement off, chop it off. We've then got to put it into the next future years. We haven't added that into our model just yet. We just want to make sure the philosophy is not going to give anyone sort of great hernia. If you go down to the next slide, John. And we've just played around with a bit of it and said, okay, some discipline, 4 to 5 years. We'll just say, every 100,000 reduces the general rate by this 0.5%. The way it works, of course, is it has an impact on general rate and the total rate. So it's sort of the maths are beneficial. So if we're just talking predominantly rural, that's the type of benefit you get at 700. But if it's urban with water and sewer, the benefit's not as much because of the water and sewer rates, This is the key point. This is a real key point. We eat up our headroom in those future years by doing this. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that instead of doing, say, some new projects, and remember, one of the last council meetings, you said, well, hang on, we better put on hold the revitalisation walkway projects that we've put in, come back and talk about us in year 4, we might have some ability to do it. One of these numbers, we probably have got some ability, but we're probably saying, actually, we might not have that ability to do those sort of things because this is more important. You've got to pay some bills back. So it's a concept. As I say, it resolves a timing issue. And I have utilised in my past career where we had a particular problem, we smoothed, by chance we got it sorted out in 6 months, but it did give us over a bit of a hiccup. So it's, you know, it's just cash flow management. I'll pause and just take any questions on this issue now before I go into the target dates.
Is there any reason why 700,000 is the number moved with?
It's just the number I can pluck. We did 700, $1 million, and I've got 1.5 on the spare.
Yeah.
We did have 225, 630.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Can we just go back to the budget, please? When the long-term plan was produced last time,
yeah,
we did a graph just about like that. When we did the annual plan for 23-24, which we're on now, none of this, what we're seeing here in 24-25, was less than a year ago identified. Now, we're now doing a long-term plan, just like we did 3 years ago, and you see a bar graph like that, you see all the other ones that be now, and then all of a sudden we're going to get to 27, I think it might be, and we're going to see a replication. That seems to be the way these long-term plans are produced. Now, I just cannot understand at the moment why what's shown there on 24-25, why some of those were not identified back in March of last year.
Yeah, so let's go through the first key one, which is Three Waters. We were no longer at Three Waters entity today, were we? So that's one. Second one is, again, still Three Waters, Westport Resilience. And that's some hard about what we're going to try and do in Westport, trying to resolve that. And the third one is, the big one there, is the road and transport program. Now, we've been fortunate that we've now got more clarity for the next 3 years over the special pits, and we've got a greater subsidy rate, which is helpful. But we're also listening to community who are saying, it's an asset, it's a biggest asset, 412 million. So those three issues, and the road and transportation is a lot about just the general movement of CPI and our actual asset. The fourth bit is other activities which we've identified where, you know, we talk about we want to need more support in the planning area, we need more support in our roading team to actually do that roading program, some of which we need to fund. We're looking at how we do our recording our assets and that type of thing. So there are other bits and pieces, but those first three are quite different from what I would suggest in the past. A lot of new problems.
Stormwater in there as well.
Excellent.
So, with respect to Douglas, with respect, I believe the same comments were made back in 2021. But at a meeting late last year, I asked about 1.7 million. That's from 23-24 has been carried across to supposedly 24-25 to do with the water. So I asked, well, okay, what's the deficit looking like at the moment? He said, oh, we don't get it. So what I'd like to know is if we've got current year activity plus activity that's been carried across from the previous that hasn't been budgeted for, where are we sitting on this?
So we've updated all that in balances, forecasting, so we've got all the information now, we've put it into our forecasting model. So they don't tend to go into the specifics today, but I can certainly do that with you. I want to put my tongue in my cheek here now. And Mrs. Brooks and I had a good debates on this because we do sit slightly on the different side of the complex. But she and I, like a number of you have been around local government long enough to full well know that 3-year cycle suddenly, oh no, it's not that different, you get there. Yeah. That's a cynic talking, but it's also a reality talking. The reason we're hammering this point right now is actually, at this time, local government got into 10-year plans to give certainty over 10 years, not 3 years. This is actually one of those times where we're going to have to be really disciplined, which means if you're standing out there listening, want to be a new councillor in whatever year it is, just be aware we are committing a few things. It is going to have to be a lot tighter.
Well, on that next page over, where you've actually got the overall draft rates and we've added that 700,000, you've got the change in there and what the additional rates are going to be. But as I keep nagging, to say we want line by line. There are some things in this year's budget, or this year's expenditure, that we sincerely hope we won't have again next year. It's in the 300,000, and that's like the Morrison loan, our forensic audit. Coal Town, I reckon we paid 167,000, which brings us up to 320,000, and that's without going on further. So, with those not being in those figures, how is it going to affect the rates? Because we just keep saying, well, this is what it is now, and that's why I keep saying, can we have our line by line so we can see those costs? They're not going to be there.
Yes.
So what, I'm just getting really, I am extremely frustrated about when I can see just off the top of my head, 320,000 that we've spent this year, or spending, and we won't be spending next year. And how is that going to affect these figures?
Yeah, so we've just said before, we've got all our closing balances lined up and our forecast ready, so we're getting ready, and with that detailed information, have some sessions and exchange information on how that will work. So we'll bring you some information on that shortly. There's a couple of things here. So the Morrison loan reviews, the forensic audit reviews, which we'll publicly know. Remember, those items are not in our budgets.
We have spent it.
Correct.
This is what's being spent here.
Correct. So somehow we're either got to find some of our budgets which we can cut from. There's not a lot of options there, or we're having to look at again. We do need to allow for some in our rating mix to recover in the future. We've used that flood recovery, which I think is fine. That's a rainy day. It should be one. This other problem is one that's taxing us at the moment. So when we get to that, the sort of more detailed discussion, because they have some impact, but the ones you've just listed, no, there's others. The Coal Town one, which I was interested to see in the paper. Great, okay, if they don't think they need it, that's another discussion. But they're the sort of things if you chop out, then you reduce these numbers.
Yeah, because again, I used the word before insensitive, and I think we're being extremely insensitive. Going out to the community before Christmas, 31.8% rate increase, and you've frightened the shit out of people. Because how am I going to manage? But why didn't we all know it was going to happen? It would come down. And when we haven't got the figures, you've got Greymouth, you've got Westland saying we're not giving our figures yet. We could have just shut up till we got some more determination on some of these figures. Rather than going out there feeling very sort of brave, saying be aware. Well, it wasn't being aware, it was being very, very insensitive. And I just feel that we need to have got these figures, and then we go back and say, oh well, most people have double figures. Again, thanks to the media, our quorum is sort of 7% of their figures. Grey are hoping to be single figures. So it's not the done that we have to these other things. And as I say, we're going on half charge because, as you say, we haven't got all those figures yet, and we're sort of we're just being completely insensitive. I feel when we're going, not completely prepared.
With respect to staff, the 31, and I'm really coming from mostly, with respect, the amount of 31 whatever it was percent was leaked. Did it come from? I remember it coming out after a meeting that we had, and someone leaked that amount, and it went on the news. It had nothing to do with what we're doing here. I remember it vividly. So now that we're going live, of course, I see these numbers. It's what they expect. I don't know if Grey or Westland are doing theirs live. It's up to them. But what we're talking about now, yes, it was untimely, but it was leaked. It didn't come from here. I know that. So we're slowly working it through, which is what I expected to see. But what I was still expecting to see is probably another, I'm going to say 10% comes off that. That's what I'm looking at. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I know we do have to move on. Yeah. I was going to follow on comment made before about the 10-year plan being realistic this time. I think all 10-year plans look like this anywhere because it makes it more palatable to charge more at the start because they think I'm getting more reward later on. And then 3 years from now, they'll forget that and they'll think, well, 10 years I'll get more reward later on. Because it looks okay, but I think people don't understand that all those small bars are increases on a big increase that's already happened. But the reality is we've got to pay for stuff. And I'd love to see it come down as much as it can to everyone would. But we still need to make sure that our we maintain peaceful and Bulla as a place everyone wants to live. And that's the balance, isn't it? I think it's not an easy balance, that's for sure.
I just want to say, I think Lee's a fair comment at all. I think we had a workshop coming up a few days earlier, which we're going to have those numbers are going to be available. So I think, and Councillor Sampson, I think we, as a local government, as an entity, we've been very much those rules on certain things. The Ombudsman came out, spoke and said, oh my gosh, with that. So front footed, we got out there and we said, right, it's a warts and all. Apologies if we're going to take a few years, but actually we're as open as we can, I would have thought. So let's just head with it. Well,
it is scary. It is scary.
It is scary.
Anyway,
right, let's move through a quick slides. Let me go through next one down, John. So these are just talking about the principles of how we manage our targeted rating.
We've done.
So this is repeating, and I did have the slide in this morning, but this is just repeating a few things. When we look at our target rates, water and wastewater, yep, we fund our annual costs. Do fund depreciation, not nearly every bit, but we do. Then we can use the depreciation in our operating surplus to fund our capitals and renewals, and then we use loan raising in our cash surplus to fund our capital. The key thing we look at, and this is one of Faye's key drives, so she's looking at over that 10-year period saying, are we coming back into a surplus? And then when you're talking about big grunting assets, like say Westport Water of 30-odd million, well, you don't get that repaid over a 10-year period. That's more like a 30-year period. So we've got to take that sort of balance, and that's what we try to do with those target rating points. And again, that's just to remind ourselves. The next one, John, sorry. Yeah, again, just that story and this point here, I suppose it's just make sure we got the right story and the good story that we're telling people. That's something we just have to keep checking on. And the last one, I think, John, is our debt profile. So again, just a wee reminder, this is our current position. This is our current own internal net debt, so debt less cash position, and we know we've breached that already. And this is our, what we call our banking covenant number, which is a combination of two, which is a facility with our main trading bank of 35 million and our 20 million LGFA guarantor status. So a couple of things, Lynn and I have had a couple of meetings with our main banker just to talk to them, and they've giving us some stuff that you need, giving us enough assurance, and also LGFA to talk to them about how we go from a guarantor status, from a non-guarantor status to a guarantor status. And that will give us cheaper money available to us. So we'll be having reports coming to you as part of the long-term plan adoption to suggest that is definitely the way to go. It doesn't mean we need to go mad, because as you can see, even with that sort of smoothing effect, we might just need a 60 mil as a maximum cap, but then we have to understand where we're going with our proposal barriers. That could be, say, a 75, and we have to move that around. But if we get grants, then we bring that back into play. But it's finely balanced. There is a little bit of an issue in that our term deposit cash does drop away over that 10-year period to around about 5 to 6 million, which makes it more challenging with the Rochester Head team to manage, but that is one of the challenges we have to work through. So I think that's the last slide on that issue, and I'll just pause here for a brief second.
So from 25 million in 21 to net debt, we're talking about 55 million net debt, an increase of 30 million. We've had a lot of obviously external funding coming through. So what I'm seeing here is obviously funding for basically for the ratepayer, $30 million over a 10-year period. Am I missing something?
No, you're hang on, that's.
So this is where we want to go line by line, obviously, because the driver behind that will be the projects that are coming up, and $30 million. Remember the 2018 and 28, it was only $20 million net debt. Suddenly we're up by 5. Now we're suddenly going up 30. That's that's going to be paid for by a limited deprivation level, I think they call it, set of ratepayers. Where's the genie? I'm lost.
Genie's run away because it wasn't three waters in here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't just put it out there.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. And on the side.
It's just out there.
Yeah.
I just want to be looking at, like, this is long term. I'm just wondering if the case, I know we're looking at a population decrease. That doesn't necessarily make problem so, but does affect the ability to pay. What if some of these sections get retired and they're really being hazardous, and you're exactly the 30-year scopes that could come into the steep repayment that could start factoring in. So just understanding those risks, or the I think that's got to be part of the consideration. You're looking at today's values, but looking at, and this is going to be a 30-year debt. Trying to mention in 30 years, what's the
So my comment to you would be vast majority of the debt is related to the PERC and how that's set up from holding. So that's got its own funding stream, which is around different from that. And the other one is predominantly around water and wastewater plants. So, if in terms of retiring, the biggest retiring issue is wastewater itself, over that longer term window, which is why the future of wastewater projects is so critical to provide that in. So I think we've got enough mechanisms in terms of how we're thinking about that resilience and protection in play. There will be a few properties, you're right, but they're probably what I call a minor sort of threshold of concern for us.
And coming on stream.
To be but there is a clear fact.
Tony, what you got?
I get what Joe's saying, and there's also contention around information, risk of wall gates, and also the facts that we have at hand. So, I hear from a risk, looking at climate change and investment, but then, it might happen, actually it might happen, or it might not happen. So, it's very hard to look as far as that whole risk of wall gates into actual reality.
Just in terms of intergeneration equity, I can understand the concept of borrowing and paying the loan and the interest off over a 30-year period. What I struggle with is the then add depreciation, which is actually paying for the following 30 years. And is that equitable for this generation?
Yeah, we actually use our depreciation cash to actually look at reducing our debt levels or pay our debt off. So we do use that cash appropriately. So we're not funding our depreciation and our loans. We use that. I've been through that in detail with the crew over the last few weeks, and the model we're using here is pretty standard and consistent. So no, we're not double dipping, because otherwise our cash balance would be accelerated. It's not right. Yeah, no, we're good on that space. But a really good question to check. Okay.
All right, so
just quickly over this one. So this is more just a quick update. So development contributions levied on subdivisions predominantly or new water sewer connections. So local government has good clarity about that. We use financial contributions under the RMA, TTOPP, nothing wrong with that, that's fine. One of the things we've had to look at though is as Elmer Road gets zoned and how that develops and all that process there, what's the best way? So we're using a development process at the moment, which is fine because it's around certain properties. We just need to look at the prudency in a development contribution policy, which has got the same mechanism as development agreement. Is probably really the way to go for that Elmer Road area as we think about it. So just more to say, because this is a sort of a a document that needs to go out with a consultation. The experience I have is the only people who are really interested in developers, understandably. We've pinched borrowed with another council and just made our one word. So it's very low level, but just so you know it's been worked on. We'll talk to you about the specifics when we get to it, but in just a few weeks or something.
Thank you. At this point, I was going to ask you if you wanted to ask any questions or raise my hand for this or do it move along if you guys like. The next topic I wanted to discuss was the draft consultation topics that we obviously have in conversation with you guys as well for the last 3-4 months. I believe are the key topics for consideration. So that is around the district water and wastewater rate, but I'll take you through that. Our rodent portfolio, which I will take you through. Our solid waste zone 1 proposal, which will take you through wastewater resilience and capital investment into that, which will take you through. And also the one borrowing as well. So Douglas may just cover the top and bottom one as one. And then the last one is obviously the Northern Build water supplies, which is something that you need to consider, but that will be dependent on the output from the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so separate piece of work of how we rate our water and wastewater. And so there's a few issues about, as we've talked about before, that we use a differential basis for water and wastewater, which is sort of fine, but actually it's sort of like it's not standard practice. So there's ways of using the rating base to get that tidy. So just so we're clear, if you've got multiple units, the more multiple units you have, you're going to pay a proportion of the previous full unit, which there's some logic, but actually not a lot of logic, fair, because every house under the rating act can be levied for one. And the other one that we're just looking at is, of course, the issue about generally if the water pipe is sitting in the street and you're next door to it, you have an availability charge because that community have ultimately funded infrastructure. In some cases, we have that properties off those charges, but in the half charge. So we're just doing that work to understand what that is, so we can show that to you. Why would we do that? Well, we're trying to find a fuse equity, which we think is better than the current system. We've got 3 options we've looked at. There's obviously we continue to fund, but we do need to tidy up 1 or 2 things about availability. I would suggest to you. Option 2 is a district-wide water rate. Rate. Then we heard you talk about, say, we'll hang on up and we'll pull up water supplies. Should they have their own rate? Because they're different. Some of the work we'll do over the next few weeks with you will just show you how those Northern Buller ones give really small supplies. And even if they don't have, say, prototype barrier costs, they become expensive anyway, because they're just coming. So, you know, the whole reason 89 had created bigger local product was to get some scope and use. And this is one where we just need to bite the bullet on these water and wastewater rates and get some heft and get some ability that there's simply cross subsidisation for communities. And that's just a good thing and easier to manage for the crew and the council. It'll be debated at length, but we're just working that through. Hopefully I've got some numbers later this week or next week where I can sit down and kick that around again and then come back and say, right, this is what this means. And those are the people we need to write and talk to about this matter. So just an update on that one for you. But I mean, just so you're clear, we think option 2 is the most effective and efficient way, but option 3, I know we're supported by.
All right, I think John.
Right, just some clarification. So there's quite a distinction between multiple units and property that has 2 titles. So that's not changing. If you only got one house on multiple titles, you only charge 1 rate.
So simple thing would be if you have a title, it is a rated unit and you pay a full charge. Right? The best example is you go up to Pack Railway, 20 dwellings up there, but because they're on 1 title, because of the way the subdivision hasn't been done yet, we only rate for about 12 of them. Right? So you've got 20 houses in any other street would be producing 20 worth of rates in water and wastewater, but that street, because of the uniqueness of that and our ratings only pays 12.
And then I'm just thinking the other end of the one, I'll take my own property for example. I've got 2 predatory uses, but I consider it 1 property and I draw 1 on water, no dwelling. So that would consider a continuous property in one rate.
Contiguous works in terms of general rate issues, in terms of how we word our water and wastewater rate. You don't need to look at the specific example here, but that's where these magical words separately, where is it, so separately used in habitable property. Because, you know, often people will say, oh, I've got a house and I've got a granny flat in the back, so therefore it's part of that I shouldn't pay for it. Well, yes, but it is two residential dwellings. And what makes that granny flat different from the lady who lives down the road where he's got a title and she's paying for it?
But this is one, this is a property, a section without any residential.
Then that's fine, but my pay should probably have half rate for that.
But then you get ones like Black Points that they have heaps and heaps of different little types. So each one of those are going to pay a half rate of the water for those.
And this is
bits of
correct,
property.
and this is where amalgamation of titles that we're rating need to be careful to go through. Yeah. There's a few tricks in here to make sure we're as fair as we can, but right now you've got a system where actually, fairness may not be quite right.
I think we're going to be that very clear because it's got quite an implication.
Just put it out there, Andrew. This affects rates I'm looking at and looking at the rates review. We're talking about this being part of the rates review, where we seem to be overlapping or
so we
disjoint somewhere.
That may be right. So we have two issues in our rates review. One is the water and wastewater thing, and we thought we actually probably didn't need to worry about that because again, the LTP was going to go forward audits. And general rates, we've started that work, doing the review work on that. That's probably more likely a 1 July 2025 implementation. Break them into two parts. This is the most burning issue. The other one, which is the 47 differentials, there's a lot more we need to work through in that because that's it's a bit more complex. This one here tidies up some inequities I would suggest to you, which we just need to have a discussion about. But it does, if you go and line yourself up against the vast majority of the councils in the country, you've got some generosity here, which actually you need to think about. But it's not as fair and reasonable.
Right. We heard a lot about three waters. You've addressed wastewater and water. What about school?
Yeah, so right now, and I know you and I probably on a similar page on this, stormwater sits under general rate until we get a direction from the council about which way, whether that should change or not, it just sits under general rate. I suppose my view would be, let's better understand Westport resilience and where that project goes about that, because the whole issue around how you protect Westport has a strong stormwater link is really wide. And so the question is, it might ultimately lead to that debate about tied to that, but right now it's 2 6 and general rates.
Well, thank you. Dr. Senior, so there's just not got one going consultation.
Okay.
Nothing else later.
I don't think so. I think I've already probably covered it. So, this council has a treasury management policy, we call it. So, treasury management policy, local government financial tools. We put it in place, but you don't have to consult on it as part of it in future. So, it's just a mechanism of document. But we're changing some things around our financial strategy, things about how our net and gross debt works, and about whether we use this guarantor process. So you will be going out in a discussion as part of your long-term plan, brings some appropriate resolution to make those changes in. So although we won't be consulting on the actual strategy itself, there's some mechanisms in that strategy we need to go and have that discussion with the community, so they're clear on it. So yeah, more to say.
Sorry, the strategy, the financial strategy, my understanding is part and parcel of the consultation process. Could be corrected, but it's not the treasury management policy, it's the financial strategy. It's part and parcel and of this document. So you were saying before it's not consulted.
So the treasury management policy is not, but the financial strategy policy is. And inside the financial strategy policy, we'll make some comments about those issues. Yeah. You've heard right, maybe I wasn't.
It's okay. I'm relaxed.
You're right, Chair. Well, that's cut.
Some, you're busy.
Okay, thanks, John.
So as John explained, a further consultation topic is around road and transport investment. And so I just wanted to take you through this. It's particularly around the bid that we have put forward to the NCTA for the next triennial, 2024 to 2027. As you would have seen in one of the earlier slides, since the 6th of December last year, there was a real drive on to reduce the rates impact, the percentage of this bid, and you would have seen there earlier, that's been achieved through a variety of mechanisms, looking at the bid and looking at financial elements. So we're down below, we're definitely from moving that 7% through to about 3.9%. Nevertheless, the bid has gone forward to our funding agent. As was equally said before, we're in a good position for the next 3 years of funding assistance rate. We've had another 3 years of 100% for the special purposes road confirmed, and we've had an uplift in our far rate confirmed as well. So both of those are good. However, the transport agency itself is currently going through a slight reset in some of its government priority statements and directions, and so they will take some time through February and March, perhaps even into early April, we haven't get confirmation of dates yet, to feedback on their support level for our bid. Their initial view of the bid was that it was well reasoned, well sanctioned, well put together, but there still remain an area of affordability all over the country. So once we get a response back as to how much they're in, are they in for the full bid or are they in for a partial bid, so a reduction, that really leaves these two options for council to consult on with their communities. One is, if Wakakatahi's support was lower than where our bid is, we have option one, is that we equally trim our bid to match their support levels. Option number two, if their support level is less than what our bid is that we as a council would step into that buffer that is unsupported and fund that. So really those are the two options that are being put forward for consultations through the LTP. Both have some advantages and disadvantages. Take you through them or just take some issues from them.
Yes, just a quick question. So just for clarity, the 75% isn't up for debate, it's just the headline of.
Absolutely confirmed, yeah. So the far rate is not up for debate, both for the SPR and local road components. What is going to garner some feedback is about the actual number within the bid. And so that is the element that's being considered. I'll just quickly step you through some of the advantages.
So, okay, the far rate 75% is what it was. That hasn't gone up where it is now. So, what is the amount of the bid that you have put in for?
Yeah, so the far rate has increased from this current triennial by a few percentage points, and the bid as it currently stands is as per the 6th of December, slightly amended, it's 46.3 million across the triennial. And you may recall Michael Duff stepping you through at that workshop about the actual makeup of it, and particularly the return on investment with our current financial and FAR support. We're talking about a BBC input of approximately $2.4 million per annum across the 3 years, garnering an actual transport that much answers that. So certainly, just really quickly, some of the advantages of us matching a potential reduction from Wakakatahi support, so that would be option one, is that there will be no increase to the rates contribution, and potentially there will even be a rates decrease. The disadvantages there are that council will have to reduce work program funding. We certainly, through our early consultation with our communities, heard quite strongly that road and transport links will stay high on the priority lists. For option two, which is if the agency were to reduce their level of input and we would cover the remainder, the advantages certainly would be that the roading, which was the community's feedback number one, would be delivered to our bid and our work plan. But clearly the disadvantage would be is that council would need to consider increasing the rates in order to cover inflation. At this stage, it just needs to be stressed that we simply do not know yet where NZTAs comfortably falls on the support of the bid. And so that will be further informed as we go through the process in the months of February, March, and April with
Thanks, Eric. I think it's still standing, yeah. You should talk about some time. Oh, sorry, Grant. Grant, geez, sorry.
In the past, councils have always been mindful of not subsidising to ratepayers NZTAs, because there was always a fear that 73 or 75% drop, because they would say, well, if you guys can afford to do something on your own, we can afford to drop the subsidy. Is that a real threat?
Yeah, that's that's certainly not without risk. So in relation to option 2, if the feedback from the consultation strongly come back with that, there would be a risk of consideration. We simply, again, don't know where NZTA's comfortably is with our bid, but I can tell you that the way that we've worked up our transport investment bid has had them along all the way in the journey, and they feel the actual bid is strong and well justified. But again, they are equally set in a national era of
Yes.
Just asking because I don't know, if our rate is something that's individually negotiated with each region, or is it the same?
No, most definitely isn't. So the FAR financial system differs for each council, and it's informed by a variety of influences, distance, space, the ability for them to look after the running network. All has one of the highest FARs in the system.
So would it be comparable to other small regions in the same kind of like Water or something like that? Would it be quite comparable with that?
Relatively, so places like the Chathams and some, North Island councils, but when we look at the West Coast, out of all 3 councils on the West Coast, we seem to hear of the others.
And just on that, that's determined, isn't it? It's not a negotiation process. They run a matrix, whatever. Tell you what's going to be.
Yeah, very good point. They run the model, what the log the exercise in their net, we must admit each time they let us know when they're quite supportive of the result.
Yes, yep. I have 2 questions, sorry, by the way, offline. Question I've got is infrastructure strategy. I did one for 21 to 15. Are we obliged to, are required that one for 24? So when will that, is that being done in conjunction with, we missed last time with the consultation? Is that question? And then and I'm not into an active one, the other one is to do with what I've just remembered and forgotten about is.
How about I answer the first one, and that might enable you to remember.
Oh, sorry, the next one is, we're looking at going into consultation and at best. Worst case scenario for Merrick is that NZTA won't come back with a number until worst case April. So how are we going to manage that? No. The answer in terms of what we've put in, submitted, we're not necessarily going to come back in February, March, wait. Worst case scenario, April.
If I answer the first one, then I'll leave that to Douglas and Eric to answer the second question. So yes, the infrastructure strategy will come back to the table. That will be on the 14th of February, and that'll be in concert with the financial strategy. And one of the things the auditors indicated to us really strong is they're looking for a really strong link between our financial strategy and our infrastructure strategy as to how those two work together. They are going to be auditing us on that relationship. So that will be on the 14th. Now, Douglas, or if you want to answer the second question around the potential delay in an NZTA confirmation of funds, and how does council address that through our LTP plan?
Yeah, so the short answer is we haven't received confirmed timelines from NZTA. To some extent, I have some empathy for the agency because they themselves have had a bit of a reset, direction reset in the October election. So they are working their way through their GPS and their strategy and direction, and then they're going to be moderating and reviewing agencies' bids, or local council bids. In the 21-24 triennial annual plan, they also were somewhat late, and LGNZ quite a lot of pressure on the Minister of the agency to move their decision making on their projects.
So, if I may, at the moment, I'm talking about the issues with STA, but what plan do we have contingency in place if we don't get an answer by the end of March, or just without full consultation? So I'm asking for what numbers, what kind of numbers are we going to put in so that we can go for consultation? Or do we look at a break like we are with waters, 3 waters, potentially using any delay to take advantage of that three months that National Government gives us?
So currently in bottled feed program, which is at the higher levels and the higher subsidy, that's built into our. The alternate option, which is we might put more money into, we will calculate that and determine what that is. But I think the council and the side said something along the lines of, well, hang on, they don't think they need to grow the weeds, so that's what's but we need to, generally with councils like this, there's not literally we feed the things that we because they know full well they give us, they squeeze us like this, it's not helpful, it's not great. So one of the things we need to figure out is, okay, if we don't have the level of funding, then we need to stay in a neutral position rate-wise, what are we going to do? So that'll be something to in the bottom drawer button slightly out to use. Now, come back to your comment about the 3 months, which is where you're coming from. That might be very much one of those things that we'll have to know. Well, actually, if we did like something with your rates, it's issues like it. So it might be this year, particularly if you ask.
On that, thank you.
Oh, I think we're on solid waste.
Yes, so thanks. I'll take a slide on solid waste. So, third consultation topic that was going through the LTP 27 was to pick back up and thread about the community consultation solid waste. So, throughout 2023, Council went out and engaged with our community around options and statement of proposal on solid waste. We got a solid number of feedback from our community that saw this council resolve to go back out with 4 primary options. And this is again here, ready to insert into the LTP consultation document when the time comes. Option 0, which is effectively the status quo, where the private sector continues to provide bag and some limited bin services to individuals that wish to have it. Option 2, where the service provision remains within the private sector rather than council controlled, but they move over to bins for all of the residents of Zone 1, and it is run on a pay-as-you-throw basis with a contract with the market simply sets the rate. And then option 2 and option 3 are the 2 options where we step over into a council delivered service. The first one of those is a council delivered service, the same as the private sector one in option 1, where we do a 120 litre bin size universally across all of Zone 1 on a pay-as-you-throw basis. And then the final option is where council provides a range of bin sizes on a universal collection route, so every fortnight, to cater for different waste generators, so from small to large families. So these are the options that are going to go forward for consultation. Certainly the team have been working hard on the pricing and the estimates. Councillors will recall that when we spoke of this late last year, that we resolved to go out to community consultation with a range industry estimates. And the team are working on refining that and checking through some financial models to further inform the 14th February workshop, where we can start putting some costs to this.
Oh, thank you. we're looking at a 10-year plan, looking at 24, 25 in particular. At the moment, the waste management contract, so environmental, is due to expire, and we'll have to be doing this. So I have to be careful. It's talking contracts here, but we're only the whole idea was a holding pattern until we looked at a regional waste management program, and that's what we went out for initially. Like I said before, that we would look at going to bed with basically Fuller, Grey, and Westland, and utilise the claims fund. Now, so there's two questions. One, where is this factored into into our long-term plan? What is being factored in? We've been told here we're going to go for consultation, but we're also doing a budget. So I need to know what we're looking at now and for 1, 2, 3, 4 years ahead. And secondly, I said already, I've been told that in the claims failed to be able to accommodate Buller, that there would have to be some changes, if you like, to the claims to be corrected on this. There's costs associated with that, as opposed to us currently going more. Not only is there cost associated if changes are required with claims, I understand there's been some issues with consents, whether that relates to domestic waste or other waste. I do recall reading an article in the Trustee, the news, about the claims landfall. So I suppose I'm only putting that out on the table, I'm not answering yet. We're only looking at consultation here, but we have numbers for budget, basically, for them. So are we looking at that? That's contingencies.
So yeah, and allow me to just break that down just to see if I can capture all of it. So certainly the budgets that are in current LTP are based on the option 0. So that is the status quo, service level provision, and that includes budgets to allow the extended solid waste recycling contract to continue to the end of 2025, and with the current private sector provision, pay as you throw away our community on bags and bins. A big aim of this set of public engagement and community feedback is to decide on a service level, which is the preferred communities and governance service level, and that will then inform our ability to go out and do a more collaborative regional approach to procurement. Now, remember, our other 2 territorial authorities on the West Coast already have their service level agreed, and they have bins, and they have them as part of universal charges. If at the conclusion of this process, we are going to be similar to that, and that would be a good click and fit. If it was going to be dissimilar to that, we have our own service level, it still wouldn't preclude us from going into a regional approach to actually getting a common contract, or at least running some procurement, but it would make 2 different levels of service across our region, which would equally provide some more challenges for a team. And then the final point, which is around regional collaboration to ensure that landfilling or access to landfilling opportunities is maximised, either within the northern end of the South Island, so that is York Valley, or across the West Coast, which would be the Plains and Butlers, and Greymouth and Westwood respectively, or maybe even starting to look across the hill towards Cape Valley and Canterbury. Now they've had some extensions of their consent to take out regional waste. There's certainly threads of conversations that will need to continue going forward. But for now, one of the first steps we need to take with our community is select the service level that they would prefer to see for refuse management in its own way.
May I just please just
Is the question that someone have to answer or not?
No, I don't actually need that answer either. I just want that out on the table. But any material change to the long-term plan, and once we have consultation, a material change to the long-term plan means we have to recommence the process again. Now, I don't know whether or not talking about the waste management We're also talking about the waters. So I'm very conscious of the fact that we could end up with some potentially material changes happening in maybe 25 or 26, which therefore initiates a new LTP potentially.
John? Yeah, the waste management is actually a fundamental change to the long-term plan. You would need to start with consultation process. That is correct. However, when it comes to the water element of it, there is in the legislation just out for water. If your water changes in according to the long-term plan, you don't need to consult.
I mean, yeah, that's, yeah.
So yeah, for the waste, you're absolutely correct. In terms of water, you don't
I think so. And I'll just put that as thanks.
We're consulting in 27 anyway. The next long-term plan. So this all might just come under 27.
But if it does, it's material, we have to go to 30. And then again, maybe 18 months again later. That's that. Oh, I'm on the highway. That's all. It's a risk.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's all I'm doing.
Something to look forward to and having that workshop and meeting plans. So that'll be fantastic work.
That's what I think.
Every second Wednesday.
And you're providing one too?
Yes, exactly. All biscuits. So Eric, I don't want to sit down because I think you're still up. Yeah, this water resilience.
So a further and last element that's up for conversation in the LTP 24-27 is around Westport Carter Beach water supply, water resilience investment. So this supply services our largest community in Bulla. It has had a hard time since the February 2022 storm event, and effectively the current financial models model the 3-year 24 to 27 investment for a full option 3 resilience investment program. It's the recommended program going forward, and it would see a number of resilience related tasks completed on the water supply, which include the trunk main extension provision, so that is to actually capitalise and realise on all of our investment today by concluding the trunk main replacement. Increasing and looking at the reservoir, the raw water reservoir capacity for the treatment plant, and some investment around raw water clarification in year 2. And then an investment in the Tunnel 1 feed lining task and connecting the north branch of Waikiki scheme into feeding our water supply. So effectively that describes option 3. Going out to consultation, there is also some reduced cost options, option 2 and option 1, that effectively strip out each one of those investments as you look at a lower cost approach. All of the other options, as you do strip further down, do increase some level of disadvantages and risk to supply. So yeah, in closing, these are the main 3 options that are out for LTP consultation around Westport Carter's Beach resilience investments. And Douglas may be able to talk as well around some of the other levers that are available to council to deal with some of the rates impacts and really plug account rates of course. But currently the financial management model of the full options rate.
Eric, just a quick question on option 3. Are those things in the first 3 years of the LTP, or are they spread out over the full 10 years?
No, they sit within those first 3 years of the LTP.
Okay.
And again, that speaks to the requirement to just ensure we get busy with ensuring that supply is resilient and ready to go. So the view here is that those matters of ensuring supply need to be tackled within the 24-27.
You might also talk about the water.
Yes, my next slide.
Yeah. So you might talk to that as well.
So the Northern Bulla water, so the Northern Bulla water supply, we talked about it earlier this afternoon, but effectively it is a topic for future consideration. So it's quite different than the consultation topics that we just walked through. And this one will be largely informed for the 14th of February workshop by our conversation with but effectively there are two options. One is that we upgrade all the supplies, and the other one is that we defer all the sum. And ultimately, this will be further refined and informed in our 12th of February conversations.
Any questions on? Yes, Mr. Reid.
Thanks, Commissioner. In terms of this board at the moment, essentially, we since about 2012, 2013, I've got to pay a year, I'm not going into detail, but we have spent multi-millions of dollars on the reservoir at the top, and we're now spending money on the main track. People in the 10-year period I'm looking at, we've got the same rate payers. A lot of people might have moved out, but we've got these people who are paying over $10 million, and now we've got to spend more money for additional resilience. I know we've had some severe weather issues and what have you, but and I've highlighted some issues, some things, one side's cheap. But when are we going to get, when are the community members, ratepayers, going to get water that they can rely upon and not have to spend any more major capex in the multi-millions, so that they don't have to have no rates increase? I don't really want an answer, sorry. I'm just raising this now because it's just a continual, if you like, roundabout. And here it's all in here, and someone's done a very good paper on that. And I'm saying over $10 million, okay? So it is a big bucks.
Well, firstly, I would have assumed that a lot of that was outside funding, but it all goes back to the same thing. We haven't paid for it now because age-old, 100-year-old gear has not been maintained for the previous 50 years. So that's why it's being paid for now. It's still to be paid for. I mean, it's that simple. It's not resilient. It's not resilient. It needs improvement.
So there was significant external funding through the IRG and PGF and whatever they funds they attracted, like $4, $5, $6 million, brings to mind, but in various iterations. But like none of this is reworked, it is actually done in step each time. So it started with the pipe, done with the tunnels, of course, and all that. Intaking tunnels, that was a decision, difficult decision to council at the time, and it's worked its way down.
We funded the tunnel clamps, external or ratepayer?
Ratepayer.
Okay, so
that was
I'm going to make some assumptions and say 10+ million I'm talking about was before we had the weather events and before we started receiving external funding. What I'm talking about is funding outside of their main funding. So that's a reasonable assumption to make. Okay? And the fact that we do have some issues still with water, that is why I'm raising the question. We may have the issues and they fixed. I'm putting it out on the table now that we've spent multi-millions of dollars, the ratepayer has, not externally funded, ratepayer funded through loans, and we're still spending multi-million dollars on water for wastewater. When does it finish? When it's finished. When it's finished. Well, that's the attitude in terms of ratepayers, and I'm sure the ratepayers are going to be very good with that.
The reality is, I mean, the reality is we get a lot of construction. There's change of regulations all the time as well. So we do impact on what we need to do. Natural events, I would imagine, huge impact. We don't have a lot of fall, and Westport too is a pretty flat place, which creates its own issues. There is a lot of money, but we unfortunately we're required to have.
I was denying that I think that's been very deliberate actually. The council started with Gary Howard's term to focus on infrastructure that was long overdue for major revamps of that and that we've worked through that. So we're not
not quite 4 million of it went to treatment that was required under the new regulations for treatment standard. We had tunnels that have been there for over 100 years that collapsed and cut water off completely. And we looked at all options from bores down the Buller River and all sorts of other options. And when it came to it, $6 million to pipe the tunnels was the most cost effective. So we thought we had it solved, and suddenly a cyclone comes along, cuts the water out and runs into the tunnel. So
nature is nature, isn't it? I totally agree.
Sorry. I suppose for me, especially looking at one Megarola, their targeted rates are huge, and we're still not getting into clarity of water. When is it going to become so critical to spend upgrades on that the people that live there just can't afford to pay it? When is there going to be some sort of cap or some sort of relief again, because water's still around, and it's just like the prices could be up and up and up with their rates. And come on, I mean, we have to put some controls around this. I mean, surely government, this is obviously one example of government need help, desperate help around it.
Will be answering those questions.
Mine's a little bit about that, but it's just the questions that go out in the consultation document, like you've got two options up here. I think one's very important because there's a question about whether those are amalgamated and district-wide, so that's one thing. If it's looked at, if the decisions go around individual suppliers, can we really amalgamate those three suppliers and feedback all? Because each community might have a different view, so we need to separate out whether it's from the address of the person that's what's in the submission, or whether we do three different ones, and then are we interested in the wider community feedback if they're not paying the bills or just the locals. I just think we're going to be very careful how we consult and what information what back, and it does relate to the people living in that service.
The rules on consultation, we have to talk to people who are most affected by the decisions.
And hence getting some reasonable prices.
So is the documentation for the long-term plan one, or should some of this legal be level around? Should the long-term plan consultation be more around whether we amalgamate those district-wide fees and keep this local ones if it's more of a community consultation?
I think the reason we've identified Westport resilience is one of the biggest capital projects for development. And ultimately, if you bring in district targeted rating, say from 1 July 2024, then that burden is being shared over other communities, which is really pretty obvious and understanding. In the future, then the Westport community will help other communities or build. That is what the three rules is trying to achieve. So the reason we're talking about it today is over the next few weeks, we're going to be coming back focusing on this particular issue, so that the concerns that Councillor Reddy was echoing others, we understand what we've had to spend in the past and why and where we need to go forward. And making sure that, the old classic, can we sweep the assets any further? We're very lucky at the moment, and we need to get on with it. Because one of the things I know when we sat here last year when we were looking at some of the colour of the water coming out was that horrible potential of a town in the water. We managed to work around that. That's good management. You can say, cool, yeah, we made it good. But that's part of the debate with the community and the school wild. So yeah, that's why this topic, Westport water resilience, is important.
I'm sorry, we've got that Westport water resilience. Go back to the slide I was talking to. It's actually it's around the water treatment along the
yeah, so similar different problem. Again, that's tomorrow in terms of that quality and whether there's a Crown funding. Whether we get Crown funding, go back and have a chance to read that local water made better. And I suggest maybe John, you email again, everyone's to the double top. Think about the questions say about Westport water and then go through that manifesto of the National Party and go, would we have to fund that? And I think we'll find they would more say, no, that's yours. But they might with others say, like the quality standards for doing it here, because, you know, that, as we know, I mean, they're hitting Wellington hard at the moment, over, under investment. The place is leaking like a sieve. Wellington have got no answers to their problems. So I think just have that as a bit of a test as you think, are we likely to get money from others, or have we got to address this week?
Please, sorry. I just, these are really big issues that's going to come through the LTP. I guess there's a risk that, you know, for instance, the water things, the numbers are, and be very open about that's what's coming. But it just like, you know, that just becomes dissolved.
Yeah.
And people, like, it literally becomes just sort of a talking out of your wallet. No disrespect to me, wrong, but I mean, literally they're looking at the number and thinking, geez, in year 3 it's that. And it's not kind of a rational, but I haven't got any answers. I'm not looking for an answer right now. But you know what I'm saying? I'm just thinking these are pretty big and fundamental. These are pretty big and fundamental questions. I'm just not sure. It's going to be pretty, we're going to get an absolute mammoth lot of information from the community. It's going to be a really challenging job for us as councillors to kind of figure out what ways through that.
So we've said all along that affordability is one of the big issues, if you like. So I wouldn't be surprised if you know, a lot of solutions about affordability.
Yeah.
It would be the same as a lot of councils around the place at the moment. Absolutely. Hey John, you've got a tight table on this workshop, you can short slide. Well, that's not, no, there's no pressure. I mean, that's not.
No. Yeah, I'll move on to future considerations. I think just to your point, we spoke over the last few days around consultation topics, coverage. But one thing that's clear for us is we've almost got an overarching consultation topic. And it's not going to be in it like that, but in terms of the discussion, it's absolutely affordable. Around everything about this, and Jamie's point around the key big capital projects that you guys are going to have to make decisions on in the weeks and months. That's the reason why, it's because there's so much investment needed that is potentially in them, and that's what makes it difficult. So that's just how we run it. So what I wanted to talk about was potentially some future considerations in terms of consultation topics. Now this won't be things that are in the consultation as such, but we're going to create a separate page in a long-term plan just for the, you guys in the council to come years to come, so that they know that we're going to have to think about it. So we're going to certainly in the future, next couple of months, in the future, we're going to review what we've done in terms of Westport, what potentially we'll do in terms of the capital spend. That's just what we're discussing in the last 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to have to think about carrying the highway as we have for the last few years when we go down to the next council. The Northern River Water Supplies, we also spoke about that this afternoon. Potentially, as Colin's point around Westport Water, an alternative supply to potentially a groundwater source, that's something we need to weigh up. Bunakaiki will need a new water supply, which we're not getting away from that. A district-wide backflow prevention, i.e. an accelerated installation programme. Are we going to look at a regional approach for waste management services, as we have? We've certainly considered in the last consultation, we will be considering in this consultation. We need to think about legacy landfill remediation. Of course, the one that we'll do on a lot of people's minds is around climate change and flood protection, which of course is a new subject for our community. And then last but not least, we need to think about the senior housing and what we do that going forward as well.
So,
we're going to retain property rationalisation, the continuation of that program, but also there's been mention about how many new things can be done, what's needed in community halls and maybe just relooking at that. So
yeah, we'll go back. Then one of the last slides we talk about other considerations, and I think we'll talk about that. Right, so good question. I'll move on to Chrissy, and you can take us through the consultation orientation engagement plan as booked in the calendar just for it.
Thank you. So just touching on, we have some really good feedback from the councillors in our community about what went well with our engagement just at the end of last year. So that is the same sort of tack that we're going to be using this year. So it's all about making sure that we use clear and concise language that our community can understand and be on board with the journey. You just flip to the next one.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is make sure that we support you to have these conversations with the community. We had a working document last time where you came to us about where the people were going to be. So they might have been at the coffee cup, they might have been at the pub, but that's where we went to meet the people, and you did some really, really good work around having good conversations. So we'll be scheduling the dates through April. You let us know when they are, because you've got that local knowledge on the ground. We can help you with the campaign material, with the key messages, the frequently asked questions. And what we want to do is make sure that we reach every corner of our region, so everyone is involved in this conversation. But mainly it won't be too different to what it was before Christmas, because that worked really well. Any questions on the engagement consultation?
I was still doing moles and that time.
They were really well received last time, so the things that we can use for possible, we will. But we've got the media channels that we use, are the different friendly newspapers that we have throughout the region. We've got radio, Facebook, emails, newsletters, but face to face can't beat. So that's where you guys come in.
Any questions about this installment?
Well, it's just the same as we do for the long-term tax, get that out there. Just asking slightly different, narrowing down the question.
I think probably one difference that you can expect is that you will have a full consultation document behind it, whereas it was a little bit more informal and open in the pre-engagement. This engagement is absolutely going to be driven off the consultation document that you approve and sign up to. So you will have better support material behind you than you did pre. So, but are there any concerns with this approach? One of the things we've really heard that the benefit of you being in your communities and having these discussions has produced some really rich data that if we'd run a normal traditional consultation process, we wouldn't have got. And there are some big issues here that we really need our community to give us feedback on. Are there any issues with this approach?
I agree with the thing up here, let's get deep the background rather than just a poll and get bias around what's catered to those being able to go and read the information or people clarifying why they made the response to be really helpful. Are we still going to go through the public submissions and
This is all. Sorry. This is all run under the Local Government Act, and so we have to have all of those key steps in place. And John highlighted it in the slide, in the third slide, around what the timeframes are. So we will be running through a formal LGA process.
It's not the 30-year option, not there.
Is that pretty cheap?
No, one is cheap. That's yeah.
Just what do you call it? Some confusion over consultation document. Those two things, of course. Consultation document, which will go to 21, which is audited and may not have to be audited this time around. It's a very thin document. What we then have is draft annual plan, which not everyone gets. So they're going to be working off the, as you know, the consultation document, audited or unaudited, and then of course we have the final audited long-term plan. So which is just on the website. So when we talk about the consultation document and available, basically we will need one of these and consultation documents so that the joint public know what I'm talking about.
And to please make sure that all target rates the GST inclusive, not have a lot of figures that are GST inclusive and targeted rates exclusive, because
Right, secondly, was a
that's
You're trying to see the one slides on it.
Yeah, the last one was just some other options and considerations that we need to think about. So this is one that's more of a longer term thing. We're starting to thinking about to identify opportunities for shared services with some of the other councils around the country. It's we're obviously looking at the approach in terms of waste management with our regional colleagues. I think it's something to think about to move forward in terms of some of the other critical infrastructure investment. As Douglas has alluded to earlier on, I think we do have to look at the move from an guaranteed status as an LGFA shareholder to a guaranteed shareholder. That will bring some reduced interest costs. I think to Joe's point earlier on, I think we need to identify what we have. We're already in the process of identifying some assets which we need in the future and looking to sell ones that we don't. The one that we discussed pretty much all afternoon is how we do some borrows, how we can spread the repayments out. And of course, in terms of looking at the rate of water. And the last thing, last but not least, that I would have to say, I think we need to be considering a level of service reduction if that stuff doesn't suffice to fix the water issue. That's probably the one way.
Level of service reduction, is that equivalent to maintain existing levels of service, or we're dropping the level of service?
Dropping the level of service.
Reduce service, reduce costs.
As a means to reduce cost.
And that's absolutely wrong. That's why I put that in both, because I think that is the situation that potentially could be in. If doesn't get if they're not approved, this is what the case figures, etc.
Are there any other questions for John or anyone else that's here?
So just to drill into that to make sure everyone's clear, I mean, obviously if we get overwhelming level of feedback from the community that the long-term plan draft as it's gone out is just not the right thing to do, and they convince this table that it's not the right thing to do, then there needs to be an alternative. And the alternative, if it's not that, then what? I mean, I can't think of anything else other than this is stuff we're not going to do. Or people are not going to carry on reporting or whatever, because otherwise you put you out there and you can't get anything the same out of this.
It gets back to that previous conversation we had, around affordability, but I think can really be those big bucket items around water, wastewater, and roads. So
the big decisions.
Yeah, the big decisions, like you said, need to be clear. Yeah, all these so-called frivolous things aren't going to create the same set of improving affordability.
I think we talked about some of those things, didn't we?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but that's that way I see it, that's the sort of stuff that's when we wake up.
That's why I was putting future considerations, but I think what this was good, just have a quick.
I suppose just try and put a wee bit of conclusion on where we got to today. So we've got a few more things to do, obviously. I've put this session short and a couple of things that are a bit sensitive. So I just want to talk through here. So one option we've talked about is the smoothing option. So we need a wee bit of feedback from you, Wessel, whether that works or not. The thing that I'm going to be focusing on predominantly with engineering, so it's going to involve Lynn and Faye and Eric and John particularly, is looking at the capital program and seeing what we can heft out to try and move things around a wee bit. Not something that we can do easily in the transport program at the moment because we've got our NZTA application and we don't have much around that. The thing we all look for in that is we've got a couple of bridge renewals in years 2 and 3. They're still like at $1.3, $1.4 million capital value, so there's not all some pretty expensive bridges. But we've got one worth about $7.4 million in year 27, 28, somewhere around there. That's the type of bridge that becomes. So we've got to look hard at that type of thing and see how, because it might be just another bridge for NZTA, that's a big issue. So we've got to have a look at a few of those things and how to smooth that. And the real sort of probably gnarly ones, and the questions on Westport Water today have been really helpful. So we're going to be looking hard at the Westport Water program and seeing, and particularly the Westport Wastewater program, because there's consent renewals and works in there too. What can we push around to try and smooth things out about the targeted rate issue? They're going to be our main focus, as well as just trying to get our document up to speed. So today, and just go up to the table, John, or down to the table. Okay, so we're sitting here looking at, and I hear and we listen and we understand the anxiousness over the rate movement. So obviously with the obviously with our smoothing effect, there's a few things we can do to push the general rate down. So I suppose even if you don't give us any answers today, we'd really appreciate some feedback over the next week, say, just to give us that feel which says, yep, we see the challenge, but actually, unless you have a single digit rate movement in total, we're going to have real challenges here. Or, yep, okay, we understand it might need to be a total rate movement. I was picking up 80%, but get some better documentation so we can understand what we're trying to explain and talk about here. So that's the type of thing. If you can give us some feedback, and we'll have a few more sections because we do want to focus in on these big capital projects and what our options are to move things around. Hugely mindful that the Westport Water, I'm anxious over this, but it's big, but it's also got the potential to be real problematic. Don't renew it at the right time. We all know those problems. That's the challenge. We've got to work with our specialists and figure out what we're doing.
One please, on the previous slide, please. The 2.2% current financial strategy limit, that's our limit at 2.2. If we, as you can see down the bottom here, we're looking at in a lot of instances above 2.2. I believe the OAG commented on that breaching 2.2 from 21-31 long-term plan, but we corrected on that. But what are we expected as councillors to have? Are you expecting us to agree to an increase in that 2.2? Or how do you want to manage it?
Well, simplistically, you'll be not only be hugely challenged, you'd be almost impossible to stay under that 2.2 under what we're seeing today. So that's the discussion over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Yep, that was great, but the world's a different place. If we didn't have Waters on our books, that would be fine. That type of figure. But Waters has an issue for us because it's now ours and we're not responsible.
What's been ours over the street? What's been ours?
We're going to be when the genie was setting up.
Okay, so they've always been ours, they remain ours, so nothing's changed from the 21-31 to the 24-34.
Not changed now, agree, but was changed.
But the general rate was 12 anyways. Not even with the jet with water out, it's still
yeah, here we are. It's just how can we tap that and smooth that? That's the truth. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? No, I think you've got some pretty good shit. This meeting, we're going to have 10 minutes before we
yes, we're going to have a closed session shortly, so that's fine. We'll work great. Just to reset the room. Just a quick update from next door. So the Coventry Museum just opened. An update session for councillors will start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Anyone who wants to turn up and go through it. It's just an open invite from Toku for us to walk through quickly. As part of the official thing.
Let me know how it goes.
Just extended that invitation on behalf. Yes, great. Yeah.
Just want to clarify too, when we talked about friendly media, we need a Westport News. Just so we're clear on that. Not answering me.
Sit chart.
Yeah.
It'll be in that live stream. What?
Oh, I'm going to take this.